You're listening to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast. Two friends since Fruit by the Foot was more than a foot long, now guides on your nostalgic tour of Disney history, one magical film at a time. I'm JB Waggoner.
And I'm Eddie Ferguson. And on today's episode, JB's love for dogs is in full force as we review 101 Dalmatians.
So fasten that safety restraint and pull up on the yellow strap, because it's time to open the vault.
Cue that Disneyest sound effect.
Man, Eddie, there's something about Disney and their dogs. They just can't quit them. That's basically, I know this is an entire industry and an entire studio defined by a mouse, but honestly, at this point, you might say it's gone to the dogs. It's gone to the dogs at this point. How many dog centric, I would even say, where dogs play a crucial role. I would say it is even part of our last film that we talked about with Swiss Family Robinson, the dogs in that. Like, how many is this now? At least that we've covered.
I mean, you would have to say, you've got Lady and the Tramp, Old Yeller, the Shaggy Dog, and now this one. So, I mean, this is the fourth major film that is totally centered around dogs. So 4 films totally centered around dogs.
And then there's a lot more to come in their golden age.
Is this your favorite out of
what?
Shaggy Dog, Old Yeller?
What is my Mount
Lady and the
Rushmore?
Tramp?
Yeah, what's my Mount Rushmore
films?
of dog films? I mean, maybe this is probably up there. This is probably at the top of the list. It is not a very high bar to get to that point. I will say that. It's not a high bar for me. There's not too many.
Then let's just get the most important question out of the way right off the top. Do you like this one better or the 90s remake that we reviewed in our first round of movies?
I mean, this one is a classic. Now, granted, I know your strong for the lead actress in the live action one.
Love Glenn Close.
Like, duly noted multiple times on here. Eddie, big fan.
Big Glenn Close fan.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick against this film because it's one of the most iconic of the animated films that they did for very different reasons than their other animated films. This one kind of stands apart. Like, the more you look at it intently, it is very different than almost any other Disney film for many reasons.
Yeah, well, it is a clear departure from a lot of the other things that they have done. You are either in some type of fantasy world or you are in some bygone era, right? Mm-hmm. This is the first time that, for more or less, has a modern setting.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Especially for 1960s. So it feels very different. But at the same time, talking animals, all of that, that's kind of common for Disney.
Yeah, so the big piece on this, yes, is the setting. Also the style of the artwork, as well as the music being very jazz-centric, which was very big in the 60s. It's 50s and 60s, because obviously they would have been making this a few years before 61 when it came out. But it just felt very much of that time period, like the artwork and the design. A lot of the backgrounds are just giant swashes of color, like just giant swoops of color that then have the outlines over top of it to give the texture. Like, it just draws you in a different, it feels so different, and yet it still screams like this is a Disney animated movie. But
Yeah, where you had, especially, I mean, the last animated film that we reviewed was Sleeping Beauty.
Yep.
And Sleeping Beauty is known for its big murals, this very prominent art direction that is gorgeous, right? I think we even said it in our review. The film is prettier, it's more beautiful than it's really a story. Like, I think the most positive thing that we actually said about our whole review of that was the art direction, how beautiful it was. So you go from that like beautiful, detailed, artistic styling to a very modern, impressionistic, almost
very pop art to some degree.
Abstracted to a certain extent, like what you were saying about swaths of color with just kind of the outlines of stuff. And I would even say this kind of will set a direction for like at least the next decade of Disney movies, if not a little bit more. Coming up, we're going to have The Sword in the Stone, which has a somewhat similar styling. The Jungle Book borrows a lot, especially the music side of that. The Aristocats, very much so, kind of in that same line. Until we get, I'm looking down the line, even like Robin Hood, The Rescuers, like this is going to set the tone for a while now in Disney animation.
So something happened here that really kind of thrust it in towards this direction. And it's kind of what we talked about with Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty was not a commercial success for them whatsoever. They made their money back, or maybe even slightly under. Like, it was a wash, basically. And it was at a time when Disney was realizing animation is getting more and more expensive. We got to do something here to kind of stem the tide of these, like, tons of money being spent and then not a lot of return that they're getting back from it. And so they kind of came up by using like a Xerox machine style of way of making the cells and the shading for this. And so instead of having to hand draw everything, they started using Xerox. And I don't know the fine details of it, but the result of that is one, they didn't, and this is a perfect movie for it because there's tons and tons of animals, tons of the same dog over and over and over again, 100 of them. But what it did, though, was it made a big difference in the way that they were outlined. So before, the artists or the animators would use different colors, and I had never really noticed this before, to outline the characters to make them blend into the scene a little bit more. But with Xerox, every single one of them are basically, the characters are black outlined. And it makes them pop off the screen. And in fact, Walt kind of didn't like this when he first started seeing it happen. But that also became the style that we kind of know today, of just very like defined characters, literally outlined in all of this. But it's funny, like going back and you watch some other of those films, and I'd never noticed this before. They use other colors and like browns and reds and other things to kind of blend it, so it's doesn't look as hand drawn. But these, starting from here through the next 20 years, 30 years, until basically 3D animation comes in, that's the style for a lot of this. Is it's like very harsh, defined outlines for all these characters.
Yeah, I don't think we fully grasp just how extensive and painstaking of a process hand-drawn animation is, because you're not just drawing something on a piece of paper and like holding it in front of a camera and taking a picture and putting all those together. Like even the process of you draw it on paper to get the flow in the animation. Then each of those drawings gets transferred over to a cell, like a clear piece of plastic that gets drawn on there. Then somebody's got to paint all of that on there. Mm-hmm. Then that goes out, and by the way, while all that's going on, somebody's working on all the background pieces.
Yep.
And then we're gonna go back and we're gonna film this and put all this together and whatnot. Like, just think through that. Like, how many hands have to touch that? How many hours it takes to do? And that's just one frame. That's just one frame. Of course, these things start getting more and more expensive and out of control, which is why Disney, after Sleeping Beauty, has to look at this and go, we've got to cut costs. Like, we just have to do this cheaper, or we're not going to be able to do this anymore. So it doesn't really matter if you don't like what it looks like or not. It's a pill we got to swallow.
So using this new Xerox, this was like the perfect movie. It's almost like they created, like, what's the perfect movie to do this new style, to bring it more modern, to try some new modern ideas for the music and the colors and the backgrounds and the style. And this really was it. Like, when you're talking about just like 101 Dalmatians, this was really the best test case for this. And it definitely paid off for them. They ended up making a lot of money off this film. They made almost 3 times what they made from Sleeping Beauty alone, like really close to almost 3 times the amount of money from it. I didn't find what the budget was for this film. I'm assuming it was cheaper because that's what their intention was. But yeah, like, they definitely paid off for them big time. And I think some of that has to do with one, having a more broader story than just they'd been kind of stuck in the fantasy realm, but having a new style, new different thing. And honestly, what we go back to, having a really solid villain. It's got to be in the Mount Rushmore of iconic Disney villains, right? Cruella.
Yeah, so I mean, that was one of the things that I had noted and always take away from this every time I watch it again. Arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, of all the villains. And I think why is, again, she's just evil and there's no excuse or reason or rationale. Like, she's just evil. And I don't know, there's something even more evil about, like, she wants to kill puppies to make just a coat. Like, that just, it is so egregious, right? Like, all of the other villains, I can't think of a motivation or what they're trying to do. I don't know that
Ursula had much of a motivation either, but that's also kind of why they're 2 of the best ones.
I guess maybe motivation's not the word, but like objective. There we go. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Like, who has a more unexplicable objective? Like, you just listen to this and you're like, that is absurd and just evil. Like, and like, where does that even come from? You know, like,
well, that's why it makes it so interesting, because who is out there trying to kill puppies just for their coats?
Well, and I think they do a great job. So from that, you get a very unpredictable character, and you get a higher level of drama and uncertainty. And the more uncertainty breeds more drama, right? And so you feel this sense of urgency through the whole film because she feels so unpredictable. And then I love the way that they just lean into that with the animation, especially once you get into the 3rd act of the movie, where she just looks crazy.
Crazy eyes. She's got a lot of crazy eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, probably this is a harder one, but I mean, in the same breath, we're talking villain song, right?
Yes.
She doesn't sing her villain song.
It's sung about her.
It's sung about her. That being said, I think that's another distinct thing. It's been very rare for Disney to do a non-musical, or at least where there's no one who's singing in the film, right? Like, you kind of get that. Like, he's a musician, he's writing the song about her.
He wrote a song.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I found that was really interesting, that song was written by a guy by the name of Mel Levine, who composed both the lyrics and the music. And this was his first assignment, was to compose the song. He had 3 versions of it. And the final version, which is the one that appears in the film, was kind of a bluesy number that he decided he needed a version like that 45 minutes before he met with Walt to pitch it.
That's
and
insane.
He came up with it in 45 minutes. This particular version that we heard.
That is nuts. He wrote that like right beforehand.
Could you imagine though, like going into something, going like, "Hey, I've already got 2 really great versions. I'm set. I'm ready to go." And like on the drive over there or whatever, you're going, "You know what this could use is kind of a, you get that idea and you gotta get it out of the head."
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Scar's song.
Yeah.
Which is iconic for not
Ursula,
only and then Ursula. The 3 of those is just 3 of the best, both villain and song collaboration. Like it's got all the makings, and they're all just like so sinister. Like
I would agree.
I guess Scar probably has the most like likely story of all of them, like the forgotten brother who was usurped by his older brother, by the brother who was like bigger, stronger, faster, like resentment. Yeah, Hamlet. And she by far is just the craziest, most unhinged of all of them.
Yeah, I would probably go with Be Prepared. That's probably my favorite of the villain songs. But Cruella de Vil is probably the one that gets stuck in our heads the easiest, right? And the one that we hum out the most.
That or Canine Crunchies. That's also a villain song. So
I love that they have the dogs watching a dog show. Like it just feels so meta. Where they're just obsessed with I'm blanking on his name. What's the
Canine Crunchies.
That's the commercial, but they're watching the Lassie knockoff, as maybe is what you would call it. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I love that.
Well, and then they do it again, and then they do it again.
universe.
So it's dogs watching the dog show, and then you've got villains watching What's My Crime, which
that's right.
I had never sat down and just been like, this is a show where average people try to just guess in 12 guesses or less what the crime is that the person committed, but then they still have to do their time for the crime they did, but then they like win something if they can fool. Like it's the weirdest contraption. And my wife, when I was talking to her, she's like, "Oh yeah, these were like shows at that time. These were actually based off of real shows." But it was the most weird show I've ever heard of. Like, what is the game here? Like, how does anybody actually win? And there were some threads on Reddit, like, what was his actual crime that he did? People were trying to guess.
This comment's going to get me in trouble, I know, but like, how much weirder is that than listening to true crime podcast?
But it's like a game of guessing what the crime is. But
but like
person is involved.
True crime podcast, like you're still like there's this game you're playing in your head where you're like, how did it go down? Like, what are the facts? Like piecing it all together. Like there is a high level of entertainment in crime any way you slice it.
I think.
Why do we have so many?
You make a
shows?
You make a good point. I'll have to. I should be expecting a text from my wife sometime Wednesday evening or Thursday during work when she tells me how it's not that much, how it's way different and it's much more profound what her podcast listening is. But maybe
you guys still go down as one of the best couples Halloween costumes, in my opinion.
The true crime podcaster.
I love the. Oh, no, I'm blanking all these names tonight. The barking chain. What do they call that? The midnight.
The Twilight Bark.
The Twilight Bark. There it is. What an ingenious idea to give the dogs that level of communication. And my whole life now, when I hear dogs barking across the way to each other, I think of that. I think of this movie and that. And it happens a lot here in Costa Rica where the dogs are barking all the time and all hours. And I always think, are they reporting some stolen puppies? Are they barking in Spanish?
You can't unsee it after you've seen it. It's kind of like when you realize that birds aren't real and they're sitting on telephone lines to be able to like recharge.
I saw that today. I saw a bird land on a power line, and that is that is hilarious that you brought that up, because today I was standing outside, saw a bird land on it, and that is the first thing that I thought of.
It's same energy as the Twilight Bark, but that's great. Also, it's like that's what Disney says so well sometimes, where they take a normal thing and just spin it or give it another story that totally
redefine
makes
it
sense.
In your brain.
Redefine it.
Yeah. Totally. I also the other thing from this movie that is heavily influenced, and I just quoted this about a month ago to Sarah, that opening sequence where dogs look like their owner.
Yes.
And how they look a lot like each other.
Mm-hmm.
So true. Happens all the time. And I took it a step further with Sarah. This was back in June, right before Father's Day. Our kids' school did a special like Dad's Day at school, where all the dads came in, and so we see these kids all the time at drop off and pick up and everything. But this was my first time to really interact with 95% of the dads, and I sat there, and it was like I was Pongo looking out the window, and I'm just like, it is amazing how much even like kids look like their dads, kids and their parents, mimic. And I thought of 101 Dalmatians. I came home and I said, Sarah, that opening scene of 101 Dalmatians where Pongo's looking out the window and men the da-da-da-da. And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, it's the same with dads and their kids. And that's the game I played all day today.
Another thing that I love from this film is Horace and Jasper.
Yes.
Like, they're just such a great bumbling idiots, but I don't know how, there's something about those guys that is just so incredibly lovable. I don't know what it is. Like, even it was one of the things that when they did the live action Cruella backstory movie, that also they just nailed those characters so well in there too. Like, I was remembering those watching this. They just like, I don't know what it is. Like, what do you think it is that makes us so drawn in to Horace and Jasper, that they're obviously bad guys. They're trying to kill dogs, but we so enjoy these guys.
Well, I think they, in spite of their incompetency, still accomplish things, right? And I think there is something about that we still kind of, wait, how is this even happen? Like, how is this still getting accomplished? This is politics, right? This is why, even though we all hate politics, we all have been glued to our TVs watching things happening. Because why? Because it's this show of incompetency still somehow, maybe, I don't know. I think there is something very like, well, how is this going to happen? Like, now I'm curious.
I agree. It's still amazing that the housekeeper let them in the house. I still don't know how.
Well, she's in that same category where you're going like, how did you've had to have been around so long that they just don't know how to fire you anymore.
Exactly. Or she has a lot of blackmail. Yeah. The other thing that my biggest question from this entire film still remains, and they tried to answer it a little bit in the backstory movie that just came out a couple years ago from Cruella, but why in the world is Anita friends with Cruella? They never really give you the backstory to that. Like, what is it that made these two actually friends? They should never even coexist in the same universe, let alone be friends and like, oh, Cruella's over here. I just don't get it.
Well, what do they say? Like old classmates, old schoolmates,
School chums.
You know that well, JB, that there's just those old schoolmates that you just don't know how to shake. You just can't get rid of them. You're just like, well, they've been around so long now, what am I going to do?
It's just when you realize this person is evil. Like there's just something and her husband, and he gets it. He gets it. He gets it immediately.
You're implying that I'm not evil. Hopefully. Silence.
Hopefully. A little bit extra silence on that. You said it, not me, but
yeah, I think there's a certain level of suspended, disbelief, right? But this is definitely the one where you're going, what?
It's the biggest. Who? It's the biggest jump this movie makes, other than that they're talking animals.
Yeah, but
I believe the talking animals
story, right?
Man, this is a hard one.
Come on. You look at How I Met Your Mother, and you're going, how do they still let Barney stick around? Like
Barney has an endearing quality to him. Like there's some moments where you're like he turns a good leaf a few enough times, just enough times.
Okay. Yeah, he's definitely not comparable to Cruella.
Yeah. It's not quite the same thing. Let's give Barney a little bit of love, just a skosh.
All right, so you've brought it up a couple of times. The live action prequel. What were your thoughts on it?
The prequel when it came out?
Yeah,
Cruella. I think we might have even talked about it a little bit. Although I'd have to go back and look. I enjoyed it. It was a completely different story, a different feel, tone, energy. It's like based on the source material, but like they kind of took their own creative liberty with it. And of all of the remakes, it's definitely one of the better ones. Granted, that's a super, super low bar. I had a lot of fun with it. I know some people didn't care for it very much, but I enjoyed it. And obviously Emma Stone, right? She was the actress in it. Emma Stone.
Yeah.
She nailed it.
I would go as far as to say that it is the best of the live actions. I don't know if it's technically classified as a remake.
And it was straight to Disney Plus, right? It didn't get theatrical, right?
Did it not? Did it? I think you're right.
Because it was 2020, 2021, right?
Right. It came out May.
During the pandemic, I thought.
No, it did a simultaneous release. Yeah. So I'm looking that up. It was the first major red carpet since COVID. And it had a dual or simultaneous release between studios and Disney Plus with Premier Access. And I'll tell you, it was the only film we paid Premier Access for to be able to see on time. And money well spent.
The two Emmas. They were gold, like gold together. Any scenes that they were like, just put the two of them back together. We need that.
Yes, we do. And I would say that partly why it worked so well is because of Emma Thompson's character, the Baroness, is more evil than Cruella. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Inexplicably evil, right? And I mean, you wouldn't think after watching this that there could be a villain worse than Cruella or more unpredictable. But that character of the Baroness, definitely so. And the way Emma Thompson plays her, incredible. The Battle of the Emmas for sure in that film. So, yeah, I would... Cruella, my favorite of the live action remakes, if you want to say that's a remake.
So, Eddie, is there any representation in the parks for her 101 Dalmatians? Did you find any puppies hiding under, any hidden puppies anywhere?
Not that I can tell. I mean, there's of course some references here or there. There's several of the hotels have like 101 Dalmatians, like in, giant form or whatever. The biggest thing is you see Cruella out as a character greeting all the time. All the time. Like one of the most popular character greetings in all of Disney.
How about for the Oogie Boogie Nights? Is she out for that at all, or any of those Halloween time?
Yeah. So all of the Halloween. So at California Adventure, you have the Oogie Boogie Nights where you do the trail, and like you can actually go, like they do these. I don't know if you would call it performance, but they're like they're more interactive than just like the typical character meet and greet. She's got a whole section of that trail, and then in Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party at Walt Disney World, she has a big section as well. So I would say like Cruella is the one who has the bigger presence throughout all the parks. And then, the movie, like I mentioned, has got like a little things here and there, mostly out in the hotels. Like there's a whole section of the All-Star Movies hotel that is dedicated to 101 Dalmatians.
Any other last comments you'd like to make or anecdotes you'd like to
This was
share?
The first animated feature to earn over $10 million in its initial release. And I got some like conflicting reports just because you got the whole like how much is $10 million in money today, inflation, all that. But like it puts it in like one of the highest grossing animated films of all time, which was kind of shocking to me that this would get up in there. So I wonder, in part, that has to deal with what you mentioned earlier of them reining the cost in and just kind of, getting things under control. The other thing that I thought was interesting, this movie was written by Bill Peet, who is a story artist. And this is the first time that a story was single-handedly developed and put together all by one person. He is the one who wrote it. Disney wanted a full script and everything prior to storyboarding. Typically, those things kind of went hand in hand and were mixed together in Disney's process. They started here with this one of like, no, we want a full-formed script and storyline ahead of time. And he didn't know how to type, so he actually wrote the whole thing up on legal pads and then handed it off to somebody else to be able to type it up. And the manuscript was completed and typed all within 2 months. He did it all in a 2-month
that's super
period.
fast.
Yeah. And then after that, Disney approved, and he began storyboarding and going forward with the whole project.
Was this Disney's last film? Walt Disney? We're getting close, right?
We're getting close. No, I think he would have just gotten in. No. Yeah, no. I think The Jungle Book is the last film that he worked on in some capacity that he touched. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Aristocats probably was in development as well.
Okay. Well, now that we're here, we're ready to rate this film. I'm going to just rip the Band-Aid off and say this is a 5 for me. It's got adventure. It's got stakes. It's got an amazing bad guy, amazing song for the bad guy. Characters that you really, truly love. Characters, even all the little puppies have their own little dimension to them, and pay out, even like Patch, he's liking the show at the beginning, and then near the end it's causing that tension because they can't drag him away from the TV screen. Great, fun, lovable, rememberable bad guys and moments, and iconic moments like the Twilight bark. Just so many good things to love about this film. My kids loved it. They were cackling throughout all the antics from people, especially whenever they were trying to fight the kids, fight the dogs and stuff, and things falling on their heads and stuff. We all just really loved it, so I'm going to give it a 5.
Wow. I'm taken back just a little bit. JB is giving
a dog movie.
And
well, they're talking dogs. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit better.
But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you gave Old Yeller a really high score. Was it a 5 as well? Did you give Old Yeller a 5?
I neither remember nor care to remember what I gave Old Yeller.
I'm going to say you did, and say that this is now 2 dog movies you've given a 5 to, and you enjoyed the Shaggy Dog. I think we're bringing you over.
Bringing me over to fake dogs. Evidently, that's what does it for me.
I stand by what I said in the opener.
Them. That's why I like it, because I can't smell them.
I stand by what I said in the opener. Your love for dogs is in full force here, everybody. Well, I make it a point to not disagree with JB, especially when he's right. So I am going to go with a 5 as well. I think this is, like when you think of classic Disney movies that like define what Disney animation is, for me, like that, this is on that shelf. This is top shelf. So I've given it a 5. Essential. It is an essential watch that comes up on a regular basis with our family. Eileen in particular really loves this film. So it's a 5 for me.
Well, there you have it. Now that we are filled up on nostalgia, let's talk about some Disney news. So one of which, I'm still digesting this information. I was listening to a podcast where the writer of this article, which is a heavy data guy, they came out and talked about just like the struggle that Star Wars has had. He wrote this for luminatedata.com. You can go on there. It's called Star Wars Struggles. Just talk about some of the numbers that they've been seeing. Obviously, Disney does not give away all of their data like Netflix did last year for a little bit. And I think they've actually aren't going to do that again. But they've kind of just done their own polling to figure out, okay, how are people watching the Star Wars series? How is it going? Are they still drawing in peak viewers? And they have become appointment viewing when they first launch each one of them. But man, they've seen a quite a large drop off just as we've gone. The Acolyte is just now finished as of last week. Good riddance to that show. That's a whole nother conversation in of itself.
Did you watch any of it?
Oh, I watched the whole thing. Whole thing. Yeah, I watched every single episode. I think maybe in the end I was hate watching it more than anything. Just felt like I wanted to be able to speak intelligently about it when it got brought up in all the Star Wars circles. So many that I'm in, Eddie. Mostly just one thread with Connor and Eleni, but where we just watch that.
I've not watched any of it. Not a single second outside of trailers. None of it.
You're not missing anything.
Yeah.
So obviously, Mandalorian has been the biggest since it dropped. Like that's not even debatable. Like it's been blowing everything out of the water. Obi-Wan actually outperformed Mandalorian season 3. Actually, Obi-Wan had a bigger release, obviously, because we're talking about one of the most beloved Star Wars characters of all time coming back on the screen. But it saw a massive drop off after its first couple weeks, like way lower. And some of the charts you can see in here, the Mandalorian stays with it quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
But so Obi-Wan in its first 2 days got 7.5 million views for that dual episode drop. So remember the number 7.5. The Acolyte got 2, about 2.5. This is like only a year. Was it last year we were watching Obi Kenobi, or was it the year before that? I think it was the year before that. But just in 2 years, how massive of a drop off of just the viewership that we've seen is pretty striking. Now, granted, there's no recurring characters, there's no new, but it had a lot of the stuff. It had Jedis and a lot of like more than any of the other shows that they've had on here. They had lots of lightsaber battles in it.
Isn't this set in the High Republic period? Like, or
so nobody kill me right now, but I'm pretty sure High Republic is even farther back into the past. This is around 100 years before before the prequels happen. Like before that time, before the
but there's I guess what I'm reaching for is there's been several book series that are prior to the prequels by however amount of time, a lot, that are very popular. Like, this is something the fan base really wants is, hey, we want to see stuff of the Jedis in their prime. Like, that's even like post Return of the Jedi, that was one of the things that we wanted to see was Luke as a full-on Jedi in his prime, training up new. And that was one of the letdowns of the sequel trilogy is that, oh, he didn't do that. He gave up. So it's a prime content matter that everybody wants to hear, to see.
Well, I will just tell you this. There is nothing prime or iconic about the Jedi that you experience in this film. You should not go in looking for that. But this isn't supposed to be let's bash the Acolyte. There's a lot of facts and figures on this. So if you're a data person like I am and you love that kind of stuff, you can see the drop off. One of the things he notes, I don't know if he notes it in here, but he noted it in the podcast I listened to called The Town from Puck News and The Ringer. He notices that Andor actually had a lower start to the season, but it had a long tail, as they call it, where it just, even after 12 weeks, 13 weeks, it just kept growing that audience the longer and longer it went. And so they actually have really high hopes for the Andor season 2, that a story that not a ton of people knew about. Now, when they go into season 2, which hopefully will be coming out this year, we haven't really heard anything. Maybe it's next year, but we're hoping that will just like completely soar even higher, maybe even to Mandalorian heights, because it did really well. It did really well.
In Andor, everybody was talking about it. I think
it was up for Emmy Awards.
One of the things that helps keep shows have that long tail is a bit of social peer pressure, right? Where you're like, oh, my friends are talking about it. I've got people texting me about
have an opinion on this.
Like, I've got to get in. I think with some of the latter stuff, you just didn't feel that way.
No, not at all. Like, it was mostly hating on it.
Yeah, like no one was saying, "Hey, have you seen this latest episode of The Acolyte? What'd you think?" When that, no, like the only thing I heard was people bashing it.
Yep.
So
that's it. We'll put the link in the show notes. But Luminate Data, Star Wars Struggles.
Is this
go check that out?
Give me. Are we talking? Is this just bad writing and bad story, or is this we're just oversaturating the content, or is it both?
Well, I mean, you can look at the drop-off numbers in the week by weeks, and that's telling you is the story is not keeping people, or they are not getting what, honestly, I believe they are not getting the story they were hoping for. Like, I think that's the big thing with Obi-Wan. It took a long time for that thing to get going, to really hook people. So you can see even on their graph, 3 weeks, it loses a ton of speed. And then 3, 4, and 5, which is when it was done, because it was 5 weeks, but it was 6 episodes. The first week had 2 episodes. You get into 3 is like, oh, I'm into this version of it. And it took half the season just to get going, really. I think that's a credit to what it, and then so if you look at Andor, it grows as it goes, because it went from obscurity. It was also fighting Game of Thrones spinoff. It was fighting the Rings of Power. Like, there was a lot of things happening at that same time culturally. And it grows and grows. Its peak is week 8 after the shows are like much later, like at the finale of it, which is unheard of. Yeah. So it's super interesting. Go check it out. Star Wars Struggles by Luminate Data. It's really intriguing. Also really intriguing this weekend, Marvel has its one and only film coming out this year, Deadpool and Wolverine. It's hitting theaters this weekend. Everybody's wondering, will Marvel finally have a billion-dollar movie again? Because it's been a little bit.
The other Deadpool movies made that amount, correct?
Yeah, but we're living in different times, Eddie. Different times.
We are.
It seems like it will. It seems like it's got a lot, but I wonder if
it's been a lot of marketing.
A lot of marketing, but this is going to be rated R. I'm like 99% sure just thinking about it. Does that affect it? Does that hold it back from, obviously, when you've got Inside Out 2, it passed $1 billion. It has the rewatchability factor with especially young kids wanting, like, having their parents take them to the theaters. Does Deadpool and Wolverine have that much cachet now in 2024 like it did in 2020? Was it 2019, 2018 when the last one? It's been a little bit since we've had a Deadpool movie.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I'm personally not a Deadpool fan. I've not seen any of the first 2 films. I have no intention. Yeah, and like you said, that R rating for me is a hard barrier to overcome. So, it'll be interesting. Also interesting, I just threw this in here for you because did you see Disney announced that they have earned a record-breaking, JB, this is record-breaking 183 Emmy nominations that just came out. To which my question is, can you really say it's record-breaking when you now own, what, like a fourth of all things that come out of Hollywood?
Exactly.
Because I start reading the list and I'm going, wait, that's Disney? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yep, yeah, you know.
A lot of effects on Hulu. Granted, a lot of that is going to be Shogun.
Sure, it's getting a lot.
Murders in the building. Like those are a couple of the big ones for sure that we're getting a lot of nods.
But I just love Disney getting out there, record-breaking amount of Emmy nominations, 183.
When there's only 4 studios that make content anymore.
Yeah. Lastly, JB, you have, dare I say, record-breaking news, something going on at your work that is definitely newsworthy and needs to be reported upon.
It was right on track. It was right on time. This was an awesome, our floor. We've got a whiteboard, and so someone puts up a poll every day where we just sit and bicker about stuff. A lot of movie content gets put up on there for our video team. Today's poll was, what is the best Disney Renaissance film, 1989 to 1995? First off, Eddie, is that the right years? Are those the right years?
To 95 was the ending?
Yep.
No, most would classify the Renaissance to going until 99 with Tarzan. That Tarzan would get classified as the final Renaissance film.
Wow. So already someone was dead wrong. They missed 4 years in there of content, and your beloved Tarzan.
Yeah, my beloved Tarzan. You're missing Pocahontas, if I'm correct. Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Mulan.
Hercules, Mulan. Those are some pretty strong Renaissance films.
So already somebody was wrong. We will get to the bottom of it when we get back.
Or they're doing Renaissance Part 1. You never know. Next week, they could be doing Renaissance Part 2. Because, what films did they put up there?
So they put up only 5 films here.
Yeah.
So we've got The Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. So those are the 5 films that you had to choose from.
Maybe next week. Next week we go Renaissance Part 2, and we get Mulan and Hercules and Hunchback and all those up there. Here's the pressing question. Which one did you vote for?
So I actually, at the time of when I took the photo that I sent you, I was the lone person to vote for Beauty and the Beast.
What?
There was another person that I know of at least one more person who voted for Beauty and the Beast. If I don't know if they put it up there, but I texted this to shout out to Michaela, one of our top fans that's not related to us. She also voted, like in her heart was going to vote for Beauty and the Beast, but the majority, Eddie, 8. So there's not a ton of votes here. So 1 for Little Mermaid, 2 for Rescuers Down Under, 1, which is very strong. I applaud those people sticking to it. I was the sole person for Beauty and the Beast, 4 for Lion King, and then 8 for Aladdin.
What?
That many people. Aladdin,
What?
For me, Little Mermaid's at the bottom of this list.
Yes,
Ariel is so freaking annoying.
Yes, agreed.
I think it coming in 4th place for me is Aladdin. I think I would take Rescuers, Beauty and the Beast, or Lion King over Aladdin. But you never know. People really love the genie and probably love those carpet rides.
You and I are in lockstep right now. So Beauty and the Beast at the top. What would come next? Lion King or Rescuers?
Man, that's really difficult. I'd probably still go Lion King because I think I
would too.
It's the bigger one. Rescuers, man, it's
so good.
It's underrated. Still underrated.
So the big takeaway here is, ladies and gentlemen, JB and I are lockstep together here, best friends.
Again, you get 2 of those
BFFs forever. I'm just shocked.
Shook.
I could maybe accept that it's The Lion King, highest grossing of all of those films. I could maybe entertain The Little Mermaid because it started it off, like maybe, yeah. But Aladdin, no. I'm sorry. You're all wrong. Please share that with all of your coworkers. They're all wrong. Only one of those films was nominated for Best Picture. Not Best Animated Picture, Best Picture. Mic drop right there. The best of the Renaissance is Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. Come on. Freaking Angela Lansbury nailed the most famous song of all time in one take. One take, everybody. One. She just did it once. That's how awesome that movie is from top to bottom. I don't know. I feel like somebody needs to have a talk. The boss needs to sit down and go, listen. But
listen, Linda.
There you go. Well, I'm proud of you, JB. That I do want to say that I'm proud that you stood up for what is right. You put your tally down for Beauty and the Beast. You didn't bend to peer pressure. You knew in your gut what was the right vote, and you went out there and you voted your conscience and not peer pressure. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to call you my friend.
You're welcome, Eddie. I'm glad to have gotten that high praise. High praise.
Well, there you go. Before we go, everybody, JB, I hope you and the family have a great week. Maybe watch Beauty and the Beast if you have the time.
Maybe Eddie. We are working with my youngest kid, youngest daughter, she's getting so close to walking. She's in that stage.
Ooh.
She does realizes she's standing up by herself and then goes down immediately. But like if you hold her hand and then you just kind of let her stand there for a second, pull your hand away, she like sees, and she's like, "Oh, I'm standing by myself," and she'll just sit down. So we're so close, Eddie. We're so close to having another walking child. I don't know what that's going to do for us, if it's going to make life harder, less, but at the very least, it's interesting. And we've also entered the stage where she can play by herself a lot more. And it's so beautiful. It's so great. Not all the time. There's a lot of time where she wants to be held and have you with her, but she can play more by herself. It's a beautiful time, Baddie.
It's wonderful. Our youngest was the latest in walking. And so we also were getting really nervous. Like, are we doing something wrong here? Something happening. So like when he started walking, we're like, yay, we're not totally incompetent parents.
Yep. There's all that parent stress, milestones.
Big deal.
I'm trying to not think about them right now, but well, with that, you've got your weekly dose of Disney nostalgia.
Be sure to subscribe to Honey, We Made a Disney Podcast, wherever you listen to your other favorite podcast. And also give us a look on YouTube as well. Come on, people, give us some views on YouTube.
While you're there, please like or leave a 5-star review and share it with your best Eddie.
Aww. You can also check us out at honeywemade.com, where you can see all of our other nostalgic reviews of Disney movies.
Tune in next week as we review The Absent-Minded Professor.
Thank you for listening, and remember, there's always the Twilight Bark.